Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories. And if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. And let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Now today's first story comes from Girls Night In, and a quick trigger warning before we do get into it that it contains misogyny within the story, so if you do want to skip it, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. Thank you. And it says, me 24 female with my boyfriend 28 male. He flipped out when I stayed over at my friend's 24 female during a girls night in. Typed on mobile. Sorry for any confusion. Hey Reddit, me and Gavin have been together for 8 months now. We met because he lives in the same building as my best friend Tammy. They're 10 floors apart. There was an instant connection and he's honestly the sweetest, most thoughtful person I've ever dated, which makes the following problem so confusing to me. Tammy and I went to university together and have a lot of mutual friends. As Tammy has an extra bedroom in her condo as well as a sizable pull-out couch, her pad is the go-to place for our visiting friends to stay. Our 2 other best friends live a few hours away by train, so every few months since graduation, they've come down to the city and we have a girls' night. We've done weekend trips for special occasions, but as we're all fairly busy, I get to see them maybe 3 times a year. We do typical things that we did when we were teenagers, talk about boys, periods, have pizza eating contests, face masks, etc. We usually pass out from food comas early in the morning and make brunch when we wake up. It's a ton of fun and reminds me of our uni days. The first time I had a girls' night was when Gavin and I had just reached 3 months of dating. I shared Tammy's guest room with my friend and we went about our normal routine. Gavin asked how my night was and I said it was great. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Last weekend I had another girls' night and stayed over, as is usual. When I woke up in the morning, I had a text from Gavin that asked, why didn't I come home with a bunch of question marks? After our friends left, I went upstairs to talk to Gavin, and he seemed super pissed. Icily, he said he hoped I had a good time with my friends, and if I wanted space from him, I should just tell him. I asked what he was going on about, and he just had this weird outburst about how it's immature of me to have a little girl sleepover with my friends, and that as my boyfriend, he was supposed to come first. I asked him why it was such a big deal, if I wanted to stay at Tammy's at the night, and he just kinda snapped that if I cared about him, I would have come home to him, and that I was picking my friends over him. He said that he thought that last time maybe I got too drunk to come upstairs to be with him, and that was alright, but this time was unacceptable. I told him before that I'd be staying at Tammy's, but he said he didn't think I was serious. Am I the only one not seeing the big deal here? I spend 3 to 4 nights at his place a week and see my friends once every few months. Am I overreacting? Help me, Reddit. He hasn't brought it up since, but I can tell he's still annoyed. Whenever I see, like in the first paragraph now, he's the sweetest, most thoughtful person I've ever dated, I'm always like, oh shit, here we go. And basically what I'm seeing is that we see time and time again in these situations. At 3 months in, he seemed to be fine with you having a girls' night in, but at 8 months, he's starting to test the waters a little bit more. His mask is finally slipping off. And you see these friends, 3 times a year? 3? And he can't handle you staying 1 night in the same building where he lives, to be fair. That's simply not about missing you, that's about control. And if you're seeing that already at 8 months in, you gotta look at this and think, is it fucking worth it? Who knows though, my view may be skewed by reading one too many of these stories. In the comments it says, the fact that he was okay with it at 3 months but flipped this shit now is a red flag to me. You're the frog in the pot. He just turned on the heat. Slowly escalating controlling behavior. Plus, he punished you for wanting to have a real discussion about it. He knew he was being irrational, so he just got angry and went straight for the manipulation. Quoting, if I cared about him, I would have come home, and that I was picking my friends over him. And then says, it's not like he expressed any desire for you to come home before you left, and you stayed over at her place before without issue. He's using his sudden anger to condition you to the behavior he wants. Force the subject. If he refuses to discuss, then you have a good idea of how he'll handle things in the future. Another commenter says, and they don't even live together. I can barely see his logic then. Although still wrong, but expecting her to spend the night when she's made plans to be with her friends is ridiculous. This dude is bad news. Banana says, girl, run. No. This is exactly how my abusive relationship started. Exactly. I used to have to ask 2 weeks in advance for permission to see my girlfriends, who I rarely saw. It will only get worse. So much worse. Please save yourself while you can, because I couldn't. 10 days later, OP does update the post and says, hi everyone. Just wanted to provide an update for everyone who thoughtfully commented and messaged me about my previous post. I read each and every one, and I'm grateful for everyone who offered their advice and shared similar stories. Reading all your comments really helped me open my eyes. Gavin's behavior was controlling and immature, and the way he shut down my attempt to have a discussion with him is not promising. This is our first actual argument, and I don't like the side that he shows when he's in a disagreement. For days after the sleepover, he was very cold and unaffectionate, which I see now is very manipulative. I decided to give him one more chance and sat him down for a discussion about what happened that weekend and why he was so bothered by it. I asked him politely but firmly why he had such a problem with me hanging out overnight with my college friends, and what he expected me to do in the future when we planned other girls' weekends. He got very quiet and said that he didn't want to talk about it, that I should just stop and drop the subject. I told him that I wanted to get to the root of the issue, as it obviously upset him and frustrated me since I didn't think I did anything wrong. He finally said that he thought that since we're in a serious relationship, if I'm in close enough proximity to come sleep with him, I should do it, as he's my partner and therefore my priority. He repeated that last bit a few times and then added that he didn't get why I wanted to spend so much time with my friends anyways. Shouldn't he be enough? That really put things into perspective for me. I ended up telling him that while he was very important to me, but he wasn't the only person in the world I wanted to spend time with, and I did not appreciate being policed about how I spend my time with them. And if he wasn't alright with that, then maybe it was best we go our separate ways. Reddit, he fucking exploded. He literally leapt up from his chair and started yelling about how he knew this was going to happen, how those bitches were poisoning me against him all along, and all of this other nonsense. I got the fuck out of there as fast as possible. I've never seen a turnaround like that before, and it was terrifying. I've already blocked and deleted him off of social media and let Tammy know what has happened. Since he said some pretty awful things about my friends and they live in the same building, I just wanted to warn her just in case he does something insane like go to her apartment to scream at her. He doesn't know her apartment number, just that she lives a few floors below him. I feel horrible that I might have dragged her into this. She's staying at her boyfriend's for a few days, and my roommate's boyfriend will be staying at our place for the next week, just in case. Thanks to everyone for helping me out before the relationship progresses any further. We have been talking about getting a place together after our anniversary, which gives me chills to think about now. TLDR, I confronted him, he went on a long, angry tangent. He's blocked now and hopefully won't do anything crazy. Artful Wench says to the OP, wow, didn't take much for him to show his true colors. Glad the roommate's boyfriend is staying with you. Keep safe, OP. OP says, I feel really lucky. My roommate and her boyfriend were the first people I talked to after Gavin's meltdown, and her boyfriend immediately volunteered to stay over for a week just in case he tried to come around our place. I feel really lucky to have such supportive people in my life. That escalated terrifyingly quick. The mask just came fully off in that moment, didn't it? Absolutely terrifying. And I'm glad that OP's got a support system around her that does help her out when she needs it, because, you know, this is how people get trapped. These isolation tactics of, am I not enough of you? And then further down the line, it's like, why are you always talking to that person? Don't I make you happy enough? And then eventually end up with no friends, completely dependent on him, and then that explosion that you just saw, that becomes your new normal. Absolutely fucking terrifying, but I'm so glad that OP got out of that situation. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's move on to another story. Now, our next story comes from the r/RBI subreddit, which is the Reddit Bureau of Investigation, where they try to solve real-world problems. We haven't seen a story from this place in a very long time. This one's from Wonderwell1, who says, there's something going on in my house that has me a bit stumped. They started their post off by saying, "I don't know if this problem is an RBI problem. So if this fits somewhere else that you know of, please tell me. For the past couple of days I've had this issue. I'm pretty sure someone is in my house, but I can't exactly prove how. And yes, I called the police this morning. They don't seem to know either, but I'll get to that in the next couple of paragraphs. I'm 24 female. If that'll help in explaining my predicament. I live alone, I keep a tidy house, more so than most people. My bedroom can be a bit disorganized at times, but the rest of my house is well organized, which is why I was able to detect something was off. I came home from work a couple of nights ago and found a bottle of scotch sitting on my stove. It was my scotch. That's not the mystery. I use it for cooking. It sits near the stove, never on it, and I don't remember the last time I had hands on it. I was able to convince myself that I had maybe moved it while cleaning the counter and subconsciously put it there and hadn't realized I did. I'm still not even against believing that, but I'm making a point. The second thing I noticed, which I know wasn't a fluke on my part, was an energy drink sitting in my fridge. I like to drink the grape Nos, but I like to drink them warm, and I'll leave them out for an hour or two to let them warm up. I never put them in the fridge. But while I was running errands, I get back and find this thing sitting in my fridge, which I just wouldn't do. It was the very early morning hours, about 2 a.m. give or take, and I can hear footsteps inside of my house. They weren't on the floor though. More specifically, they were on the ceiling. I have a metal roof, and the sound of something hitting that is very different from the sounds I was hearing. These definitely sounded like they were coming from the attic. Also, I don't have an attic. What? I called the police. They were not very much help. Wasn't much they could really do. They looked around my house for entries, nothing seemed to stick out. I did this myself, but I felt a second set of eyes could hopefully point me to something that I didn't see. But as I stated, they weren't much help. Not trying to take jabs at the police, but it is what it is. I worked the day shift today. When I got back home, I found a few of my ceiling tiles on the ground. This was alarming. It was like someone had stepped through my ceiling. I have no clue what to do. I had my neighbor from next door come over to help me find a place someone could have gotten in. My windows are always locked. There is one place on the outside of the house that is theoretically able to be accessed and entered through, but it would require a ladder and a screwdriver to get through, and I just don't see how someone could access that without raising alarms from the neighbors. Any and all advice and recommendations are welcome, and because I know people will suggest this, cameras are already ordered. At this point, OP adds an edit to the post and says, "Thank you for everyone for responding. I feel the need to clear a couple of things up that seem to be confusing people. First, I was in a jumpy state of mind when I initially wrote this, and I'm realizing that I wasn't clear in explaining some things. I've addressed it in many of the comments, but I'll address it here to hopefully be more informative. The 'I don't have an attic' comment was a poor choice of words. I mean that there doesn't seem to be anywhere up there that anyone has been able to find from within the house. There is obviously a way up there, albeit a challenging one. There's definitely space for movement on the upper portion of the house. Second, the Nos. I completely take responsibility for this one. I did absolutely zero to clarify what I meant. The flavor of Nos that I like isn't sold commercially in packs from the grocery store. I have to buy them cold from the cooler at the gas station and then let them sit out to warm up. I understand that my initial explanation was a bit confusing, and I'm sorry about that. Also, I called my older brother and asked if he'd come and check out my place with me so I can have an unbiased set of eyes on the property to see if a conclusion can be reached. People expressed concern that I was staying in the house, and I very much appreciate not only these users, but everyone who offered advice. I'll be staying with my brother and sister-in-law until the matter is resolved. Edit 2. Culprit found. Not what I was expecting, but a handful of commenters were right. I'll update in a full post when I have a minute. I'm fine, I'm safe, I'm not in the house, and thanks to everyone expressing concern. I won't be staying in the house anymore. I'm going to find somewhere else to live. Edit 3. Everyone requesting an update. I made a second post regarding the resolution. Now, on RBI, I occasionally read this just for my own entertainment by myself without recording it, but there's a usual thing that people jump to within these stories, especially when people are forgetting stuff, etc., which I'm not going to call out immediately, because if I do, then it just sort of like gives everything away if that's what it turns out to be. But if it turns out to be a person in there, in your house, doing stuff around, that is absolutely terrifying. And I've heard of this before about people like living in attics and various things and then coming down at night to do the washing up and various bits like that, which is terrifying in itself. So, you know, OP getting out of the house either way is a good call before they find out what's going on. They clearly found out what's going on. OP said culprit found, which was interesting. But of course, let's go to some comments and see what they think. Commenter said, do you rent or own? If you rent, I'd consider the possibility of the landlord or a previous tenant. If you own the house, this screams that you have a Frogger, P-H-R-O-G-G-E-R. There's a non-zero chance it's the neighbor, but I don't have enough info about the neighbor. Regardless, document everything, keep reporting things to the police, communicate what's happening to friends/loved ones. You want documentation and paper trail regardless of the course. I'm sorry this is happening to you. I'm assuming Frogger's someone that lives in your house, and yeah, from Google, it's exactly that. Apparently there's whole documentaries on it. I'm gonna have to have a look into that. But OP comes in and says, I don't own the property, I rent, but I had the locks changed when I moved in. The landlord doesn't have my current set of keys. Nobody does. And as for my neighbor, I mean, it is a possibility. In theory, at least. I don't personally think so, but I'm not at the stage where I'm willing to rule anything out. He's a pretty big guy that moves slowly. He doesn't really scream stealth. This does sound like frogging. My issue with it is not knowing how someone is getting into the house. I'm not trying to make this sound like a creepypasta. I'm just not able to figure out the exact factor that I'm missing. People are saying, does anyone else have spare keys to the house? And OP says, no, I live alone. I don't even have a spare key hidden outside, and I had the locks changed when I moved in, so it couldn't be a former resident. Had the locks changed when I moved in, the landlord doesn't have the key, nobody does. Commenter says, the possible entry point needs to be thoroughly checked. What you think no one can access may be different than the truth. Maybe you used a ladder and pulled it up behind them. Neighbors could potentially watch this happen and not realize you'd be in trouble. I'd suggest raccoons, but they aren't putting drink cans in your refrigerator. I might suggest you consider sleeping with your Second Amendment right. Don't be embarrassed to ask police to return. Second thought, any possible carbon monoxide present. Do you have an alarm for this, and is it in working order? OP says, I'm a Canadian. Gun ownership is a privilege here, not a right. I do have guns for hunting, but for me to shoot, I would essentially need to prove that my life was in immediate and unquestionable danger. Home intruders don't always automatically fall into that category here for some reason. I do have 2 carbon monoxide detectors in the home. I have one running all the time and use a second one during the winter, just to be safe. Another commenter says, 1. You have cameras in the house? If not, get some. If you feel weird about filming when you are home, only time them on when you are gone. 2. Do you have cameras outside of the house? If not, get some. 3. Do you have motion sensors in the house? 4. Old school tricks/spycraft. A. Photograph your house as you leave so you can compare when you get back to see if anything is different. If so, photograph again to document the difference. B. Tape a hair or other such filament to your front door across the gap and see if it has been disturbed when you get back. You could also do this with the fridge door. C. You could sprinkle flour or something on the floor to see if there are footprints when you get back. Obviously photo after sprinkling so you know what it looked like. 5. Carbon monoxide detector. If you don't understand why, look it up on Reddit. A classic story. 6. Edit. In one of your other posts you mentioned you like ghost stories and haunted house stories. Could this be a ghost/haunted house story you are foisting upon us? OP says questions 1 to 3 were covered pretty much in my last sentence on the post. And no, I don't, but I do have them ordered. 4. Yeah, those are good suggestions that I may utilize myself. 5. I have 2. Actually, I have them because of the sticky note incident, which is the story I'm assuming you're referring to. Another commenter says, have a double look at the higher optional entrance. People who would do this wouldn't have any issues with harder to access spots. Have you had a recent breakup or strange interactions online? Could you find out anything about the last people that lived in your house? Cameras are good. Calling the cops again should be on the table. I know they are basically useless, but having them around might help make your place less interesting if someone is messing around. This sounds really scary, and I hope you're okay. OP says no recent breakups and no weird online interactions. I don't know much about the previous resident other than he had some credit problems. I got his mail for a few months before he changed his address. I'm going to make another police report and see if they can maybe check up on the top entry point. I didn't have the immediate resources to do that by myself. Another commenter says, do you have a carbon monoxide monitor? I've read about people experiencing weird things happening in their homes, and it turned out they had high levels of carbon monoxide. They were forgetting things they had done in the house, and some experienced even more severe side effects like hallucinations. Opie again says, I have 2 plugged in. I read the famous sticky note incident a number of years ago, and that's pretty much the reason I have carbon monoxide detectors. I have one plugged in all the time, but a second one during the winter months, just to be safe. A commenter comes in and says, why didn't you mention you have a boyfriend? Could he have moved the stuff? Why does the NOS need to warm up if you don't keep it in the fridge? What type of ceiling tiles do you have? Most houses only have tiles in the basement. And finally, what do you cook with scotch? Bunch of random questions there. Opie says, we rarely ever hang out at my place, and he wouldn't be there without me being there also. The NOS is bought from the gas station cooler, which is why I have to let it warm up on the counter. As for the ceiling tiles, I don't really know. They came from a closet adjacent area, which is the same as my ceiling anywhere else. And scotch is a good marinade for things like chicken and pork ribs, often best when paired with honey and ginger. Opie says on why she changed the locks. I changed my locks because of an experience with a past landlord that was constantly going through our apartment when we weren't home. He was harmless and had no ill intent, just very meticulous about the property and wanted to make sure things were up to code. But it became an issue of privacy. Because of this, I changed my locks when I moved in. So, have you thought about yourself what's going on in OP's home? What do you think? Let us know in the comments before we move on to this update, because we're going on to it right now. Hello everyone. If you're here from my previous post, thank you. If you haven't read that post, maybe read that one first to understand. First, a big thank you is in order. You're all very helpful in your suggestions, and quite a few of the commenters were correct. If it wasn't for the insistence of the commenters, I would have assumed I was still doing things correctly and maybe dead sooner rather than later. I called my older brother and asked him to come check out my house with me and see if there was something in the house that I was missing. He was able to look at the entry point at the top of the house. The screws weren't turnable, and he eventually abandoned the attempt to open it. There was a very unlikely chance that anyone was using this to get inside. But the scarier part is coming right now. Carbon monoxide was a big thing recommended as the culprit in my original post from the comment section. I informed most users that I have not 1, but 2 carbon monoxide detectors in my home. I was very convinced that wasn't the reason behind it. But my brother had decided to check my fuse box, which is located on the outside of my house. One of the fuses was turned off. It just so happened to be the fuse that was powering the outlets being used for the carbon monoxide detectors in my house. He said it was the recent freeze. It was possible that the fuse had frozen and then switched off gradually once the ice had thawed during the day. I don't know about all of that, but it sounds plausible enough. Finally, once the fuse was turned back on, he recalibrated my carbon monoxide detectors. I admittedly don't know how to do this, and there were higher than normal levels of carbon monoxide detected in the house. With the heat running and without proper ventilation, I seem to have been doing strange things in an altered state of mind, or just downright hallucinating. As for my ceiling tiles on the floor, I don't know. But it was near a closet, and when I looked at an old picture I had taken inside of the house when I was first trying to rent the property, I noticed a picture of the tiles hanging loosely from the base. It must have been one of those things that my brain defrags as relevant information and never fully noticed it. The falling was seemingly just a natural occurrence, and my brain conjured further paranoia to fuel my delusion of an intruder. So that's it. Mystery solved. Thank you everyone for your helpful suggestions and concern for my well-being. It did not go unnoticed by me, and I apologize for wasting the community's time. I'm also going to get checked out tomorrow. I feel fine, and I've been breathing natural air for a few hours now, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. Sending everyone really big hugs of gratitude. Commenter says, you finding out it was in fact carbon monoxide and saving your life will never be a waste of anyone's time. Your brother most likely feels the same way about the time he spent checking things out for you. You have nothing to apologize for. Commenter says, you should go get checked out tonight. Getting your carbon monoxide level checked, carboxyhemoglobin, is pretty quick and easy. If it is high, they will likely put you on some oxygen to help force out the carbon monoxide from your system. And also, don't stay in the house until the fire department has also checked it out. Make sure there are no ongoing carbon monoxide emitters / no ongoing high carbon monoxide levels. And one more commenter says, I'm glad this has been sorted out. Your previous post sounded very carbon monoxide-y, but the two detectors had me stumped. Kinda wild that they both failed simply because one fuse was turned off. This is absolutely one of those stories that's going to get referenced alongside the other carbon monoxide story for years to come, and I'm so glad it does. It points out something very important to check on your carbon monoxide detectors. Give them a little test every once in a while, and it could potentially save your life. And I'm so glad that the Redditors just kept pushing, just check on them anyway, just in case, because it is absolutely wild what it can do, isn't it? The ceiling tiles already being loose in her moving photos, but the CO poisoning made her just rethink it as a whole completely different thing, and she was hallucinating footsteps at 2 a.m. Well, basically being poisoned. And OP apologizing for wasting people's time. Like the commenter said, there's absolutely not a waste of time, and the commenters really helped out OP in this situation and potentially did save her life in this, because that's wild, isn't it? Wow, I do like that subreddit. But again, I'm just so glad that OP is safe and hopefully doing a lot better now. But what do you guys make of this situation? What do you think of the RBI subreddit? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much. Truly, it's absolutely amazing. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.